Welcome back to the Homegrown Film Room. Look, there is a lot of talk about where are these quarterbacks ranked, coming up for the draft, where are they going to go, what's it all about? So here's what I did. I just went back, watched some film on these guys. Look, I'm an NFL guy. I watch college football, but it's kind of just in fun in my leisure time. But because these guys are about to be in the NFL, I like to see how do they slot in. Not like what's their skill set. We can talk about that, and we will with these guys. But mostly like where do they fit? You know, for me, like I'm a huge believer in coaching. I'm also a huge believer in the right fit for these players. A lot of times, I'll just be honest with you. This is what happens. Teams that are at the top of the draft, they draft these quarterbacks because they need a quarterback to sell tickets and jerseys. It's not even the right fit for those guys. And a lot of times, it's not the head coach or the offensive coordinator that gets to pick these players. It's because the team needs them to fill seats. That's the truth. And so for me, when I watch these guys, there are places that I want them to go based on their skill set and where I think that they would be the best player. But that's not necessarily what's going to happen. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tell you what I feel is the top 5 guys in this draft class. Now, this doesn't mean that they're going to be the top 5 guys because they could get drafted into a crazy position. See Carolina Panthers and what they've done recently with their quarterback. Not a bad player, and actually a really good football player who, if he would have landed in Houston, probably would be having the same success, if not more, than C.J. Stroud. That's just the brutal truth. So let's walk through these guys. I'll start with number 1. My number 1 quarterback in this draft class is Cam Ward. Now, I know that's probably across the board, that's how a lot of people feel about it. You know, but when I look at it, I look at Cam as a guy that you can plug into a lot of different systems. Now, when you watch him in Miami, he makes incredible throws, incredible plays, Patrick Mahomes type plays. We hear it all the time. Oh, he's Patrick Mahomes this. Yes, he does all those things. He pushes the ball down the field. He makes incredible throws off platform. What I like about what Cam does is we talk about processing a lot, and I know that that's the number 1 factor. You'll hear me talk about that a lot with a lot of these guys. They're processing. And what that is how fast do you download information from what the defense is doing and then make it happen on the same timeline. And what I mean by that is that we don't have to go to the sideline and look at the tablet and say, oh, we should have made this play. These guys make these plays. Guys with fast processors. I think about Joe Burrow right now. He's probably the fastest processing quarterback out there. He sees it. The ball's out, almost out too fast, almost to the check down too quick. But he knows. Outside linebacker got wide. He dumped it down. Right? Let's go to the next play. That's the type of processing that you need to win at the NFL level. And I think that Cam Ward has a really quick processor. He just hasn't been asked to do a lot. Like you watch Miami, and they run the same play a lot. They just back to back to back. And it's because they can get away with Cam just being able to rip these RPOs out. He gets out of his hands so fast, and he's almost like playing shortstop. Like he can just ball in the running back's gut. He sees the backside safety, flips his hips, rips it. Right? So I love Cam for that ability, his ability to push the ball down the field. What he hasn't done a lot of is been asked to kind of rip through progressions or really even know what the defense is doing. And that's something that I have a problem with a lot of the college offenses that I see is, and I understand why they do it because they don't have a lot of time to coach these guys, but they don't ever really get to learn why they're throwing certain routes. They just see keys and they pull the ball and throw it. And that's what, when you watch Cam, that's what he's doing a lot of. And he's excellent at it. Like, I don't want to knock Cam Ward at all. I think he's a fantastic player. I think in the right system, if you take him, let's just say, it's not going to happen, but let's say Andy Reid grabs him. And he can develop him and take those raw skills and turn it into what we've seen with Pat Mahomes. He can have that type of career. I actually believe that. But he could also land in a place, because they want to draft a flashy, exciting young quarterback, he can land in a place, which I won't name any names, but that maybe runs a more pro-style offense, ask him to kind of read and diagnose, and if they play him early, he won't have success. That's just the brutal truth. He's not going to be as good. So I love Cam's ability. So if I just see raw ability, what I would do if I was an NFL GM or a head coach, number 1 on my board would be Cam Ward. Congratulations, Cam. Be the first pick, man. That'd be fantastic. Number 2, Shedeur Sanders. I think Shedeur is he's polarizing, obviously, because people are going to say, oh, he's had success because of his dad. He was at a smaller school, and he kind of just was brought along. Shedeur can play. He has incredible poise. Cam Ward, they also said he looked kind of like he's lazy in the pocket sometimes. I love that. I love that feeling. If you are so comfortable in the pocket, which I never was, with a lot of people flying around you, right? That shows that you have trust in your scheme, in your ability to kind of break out of those situations. Shedeur he's very comfortable at times. Now, in the last couple of games when I watched him play this last year, he looked a little uneasy. And you know what? I'm just going to blame the fact that the offensive line was what it was. You could say it was bad. I could say that there was a combination of a lot of things going on there. I think that if Shedeur can get into a place where he really trusts the play caller, I think he's a really smart player. I think he's a really intelligent guy. He's able to layer the football, and he can put different touches on it at different levels. You never really see him try to throw a fastball. I don't know that he doesn't have the ability to do that. I think that he does, but I don't think that he ever feels like he has to. He throws with great anticipation, which I love. I think that translates big time. I think back to when I was watching Jared Goff play, and I see why the Rams saw what they saw in him, and now why Detroit is having such success. He's able to layer the football into that 15 to 20-yard level, and Shedeur can do that really well. So I like Shedeur. I think he has to be in a system that doesn't have to necessarily be an RPO-based system. I think Shedeur, out of all the quarterbacks, has the most flexibility. Like, you could draft Shedeur, let's just say in Dallas right now. You could trade Dak to Minnesota, and I think you'd be fine. And that's not a knock on Dak. That's just how I feel about Shedeur. I think that when you look at the way he plays and the calmness that he reminds me of a young Deshaun Watson with his poise in the pocket, kind of takes a deep drop, can see everything. A lot of times when you watch Shedeur on film, you're like, well, just kind of get to the next progression. When he was in Colorado, and I felt this when I was in Fresno, and I didn't necessarily have to move around as much. I think I was sacked like 15 times my last year. They were excellent. I had Logan Mankins playing tackle for me. I was very blessed. Pat Hill put together an incredible offensive line. So I didn't feel like I had to do that a lot, but there were times in games, especially when it was close, where it was like, I'll just make the play myself. I'll just physically kind of run around these guys, and Shedeur, I think, does that sometimes. He's skilled enough in the pocket with his presence and feel that he feels like he tries to have to make more plays than he probably should. So if he gets to a system that he's comfortable in, he can utilize that comfort level and that poise that he just naturally has, and I think he can play great football. He can play complementary football. It's one of those things where you start to do more than you should because you feel like you're the only hope. That's what Shedeur, I think, feels like at Colorado at times. But I love the way that, like, you go watch him on the sideline, you watch him interact with his teammates, the ownership that he has at the line and on the sideline. I love that. So I think Shedeur is going to play early. I think he's going to be really good. So those two guys right there, Cam and Shedeur, I think they are the cream of the crop. I think those are the two best, and I think that any team that gets those guys can tailor a system if the coaching staff is good enough to make them have success in this league. Then you come into a whole bunch of guys. Like, there's a group of guys here now, like Jaylen Milroe. Like, you watch him play, he's like this year's Anthony Richardson for me. He's got a lot of ability. I think Anthony throws the ball better. I think, but Jaylen down the field, he'll throw it really nice. He's got such physical ability. The NFL now is to a point where you can move around and you can be Taysom Hill. You can play and have success in this league with that type of play. And so I think Jaylen is interesting. I don't think he's in my top 5. He's a guy for me, and I just had to mention him because he's such a raw talent. He's a guy that you definitely would bring in and say, hey, man, and this isn't a knock on Jaylen. Like, why can't you run the ball from the quarterback position? He absolutely can. Why can't you win that way? I mean, look at Jaylen. Look at what Jalen Hurts did the first couple years in his career. I mean, he blossomed into a great quarterback. But early on, he was running. He was using his legs to create one-on-ones. So I think there's a real spot for Jaylen, probably more than a lot of these other guys. That's why I mentioned him at 3. I don't think he's my 3rd highest quarterback. I would not take Jaylen to be my quote-unquote franchise quarterback off the jump. But after those first 2 guys, I would look at Jaylen really hard and say, well, if we're going to fill a quarterback spot here, maybe put this guy on the field, because that would be a really interesting, tough thing for defenses to have to defend. So when I look at the other guys, I think there's 2 guys that stand out for me that are in that 3rd spot, and we'll kind of give them 3A and 3B. I think it's Jackson Dart, and I think it's Kyle McCord. Now, you're going to say Kyle McCord threw 3 straight pick sixes against Pitt, right? I saw it. But what did he do after that? How did he play after that game? I'm going to say when you look at Kyle McCord and what he did going from Ohio State, basically getting kicked out, and you could say he left, but basically saying, we're going to take Will Howard, and we're going to move on with him. I would argue that Kyle McCord had a better year this year than Will did. And if they would have had Kyle in Ohio, it would have been easier to win the national championship. That's just my personal opinion. Kyle McCord, for me, has velocity. The spiral is tight. He can throw it at any level of the field. I think he has an incredibly fast processor. You talk to the Syracuse head coach, when he ranks the pecking order of who he trusts on his team and who has command of that team, it's him and then Kyle, and then the coaches. That's how they feel about Kyle McCord. And when you watch him, you can see why. They gave him the keys to the kingdom, essentially. And what did he do? He just went out and broke every record in their conference history. I mean, the guy's incredible. So I like Kyle McCord probably more than I should. I think that he's a pocket guy. He can move. He's not going to be a guy that is ever going to just go out there and run RPOs, run your Jaylen Milroe type plays. He's not going to do that. But I think Kyle McCord is a great player. And I also think that, look, quarterbacks, you have to go through the fire a little bit sometimes before you can find out who you really are. And for him to have what happened to him at Ohio State, for him to leave, and then to go through what he did at Syracuse and to play the way that he did, big Kyle McCord fan. Big one, all right? So I would not be surprised if he's a starter in this league for 15 years. If he finds a team, finds the right spot, that's the key. Like, don't put him in an RPO-based system. Get him at the line of scrimmage. Like, I know this probably wouldn't be great for Kyle, but like, put him in Cincinnati. Let him play like Joe Burrow. I think you'd see a lot of upside from him. So a system similar to that, right? Zach Taylor basically took that West Coast hybrid system that Sean McVay runs and kind of created his own monster with Joe Burrow. If you're able to do that with Kyle, I think that he would have similar success. I really think that, obviously he takes some chances. He's got a little Jay Cutler in him, right? I know Austin, my son, probably loves that. Probably loves the Jay Cutler aspect of him. But I think that he's calmed down enough to where like he understands that I don't have to make every throw. And you learn that as you grow. But I'd rather have a guy that I have to reel in than a guy that I have to say, well, we can't really push the ball down the field like this. So I love Kyle McCord. Jackson Dart's. So Jackson Dart's right there with me because I think that Jackson is more of that RPO type player. You watch Lane. Lane's come a long way. His offensive system's fun. He pushes the seams, right? They rip balls into the seams. Like, they are not afraid. And Jackson was incredible at it. He's probably the best quarterback that they've had at Ole Miss since Eli. I love Eli, but Jackson's really good. Jackson's a good player. He's not crazy athletic. Like, he's not just going to break you down with his legs. But man, he's a good athlete. I mean, he can make plays with his legs, and he can do things. He can move the pocket with some of these boots. Jackson is probably, I mean, he's cracking on being a solid starter. It's just going to have to be the right scheme. I don't necessarily know if his processing ability is as good as Kyle's, even though Kyle makes like almost like more bonehead plays, you'd say. Like, he forces it into coverage more. I think just because Kyle, he sees it and he feels like he can get there with his arm. I can rein that in. I think Jackson just probably isn't as quick, isn't as sharp at being able to do that than Kyle is. So they're 3A, 3B, man. They're all good players. I want to see where they land. I think that's going to be important. Jackson can probably run in more systems, I think, than in the NFL now, but I think Kyle, just with his ability to understand what he's seeing and kind of diagnose and push it, he might have the slight edge, but we'll see how they develop. So after that, you got Quinn Ewers, and then you got Dillon Gabriel. So like, when I watch these guys, Quinn is probably been like this his whole life. He's a little bit undersized, a little bit underwhelming when you watch him throw. And Dillon Gabriel's the same way, like, not a big guy, but I would say Dillon is interesting to me, just because when you watch him, he's got a little bit something to him. And I know that Quinn does as well. But Dillon, for me, is interesting because he reminds me of, like, and I know he's left-handed, so it's like, you're going to say Mark Brunell. Yes, I'm going to say Mark Brunell. But I think that there's something to that accuracy element, the ability to understand how to layer the football, to have a little bit of a shortstop mentality. And I like that about Dillon Gabriel. So, with all those guys, Will Howard's in there too. And Will did a fine job, obviously national champion. They did a good job, with Will. But I think for me, those top two guys are clearly the cream of the crop. Jackson and Kyle McCord are right there, 3A, 3B. Jaylen Milroe is a different animal. I would not put him in the same category as those guys, although he might get drafted higher than maybe every one of those guys except two of them. But yeah, that's my breakdown. So I'm really more interested on draft day to see where these guys fit. Like, I'll let you know. We'll do a video after they get drafted, and I'll tell you, like, great place. They just got him because they wanted a jersey to hang on the wall. They wanted to sell some tickets. Like, I'll just break it down for you because I've seen it happen over the course of the last 20 years, and that happens every year. And I don't want to break anyone's heart because these guys could go and be great players, but some of these fits are not going to be good, but some of these fits are going to be home runs, and I can't wait to tell you what they are.